All right, I'm here in the sim to help you through activity two, whether or not you wanted to just check your answer or possibly you were having a hard time with activity two. So I'm going to model it for you. We need to find two instances, one where we put substances together and we have no chemical reaction happen, and another that we put two substances together and a chemical reaction does occur. Then what we need to look at is how are the atoms arranged? So what is the arrangement of atoms when we have a chemical reaction and when we don't have a chemical reaction happen between two substances? So I kind of worked this out before I did my video. I am going to put sodium in with hydrogen, and I'm going to test that. As you can see, the atoms, when they bump into each other, nothing seems to be happening. So let's go and look at the results. Okay, when we review this, we started with sodium, we started with hydrogen. After we combined the two, we ended up with sodium, we ended up with hydrogen. So what we need to do is kind of take a look at, first of all, did we have a chemical reaction happen? My answer would be no, because I ended up with exactly the same substances that I started with. So my reactants, what I began with, were exactly the same as my products, what I ended up with after I combined sodium with hydrogen. When I look at the atomic arrangement, sodium is still one just purple atom on both sides. So nothing happened different with the atoms of sodium. And I have two white hydrogen atoms connected to each other before and after combining. Therefore, I don't think a chemical reaction occurred because there was no rearrangement of the atoms. We still have the same repeating atoms for our reactants and our products. I'm going to go reset this, and I'm going to pick a couple different substances that I know already are going to chemically react. So I'm going to take chlorine, and I'm going to take uh, let's go with carbon, and I'm going to go ahead and test those. And you can see something much different than the first time that we tried to have a chemical reaction take place with sodium and hydrogen. In the first one, there was a rearrangement of the atoms here. So if I go to the results, we ended up with carbon tetrachloride as our product. So if we review what happened, we started with chlorine and we started with carbon as our reactants, and we ended up with carbon tetrachloride. So to me, that's evidence that there's a chemical reaction that occurred, because if I take it a step further and I look at the properties, I started with a green yellow colored gas and a black solid, and I ended up with a colorless liquid, which that alone has many different properties than what I started with. And we know if we have a new substance, it's got to have new properties, which when you look at some of the other properties, they're much different also. Like carbon tetrachloride is sweet. It says it's ether like, and we started with carbon that's odorless, and we started with chlorine that's irritating and pungent. That means that it smells really awful. So almost all of the properties are different in our product than our reactants. And when you look at the arrangement of the atoms, they're much different. We don't have a carbon just by itself anymore after the chemical reaction takes place. Now we have an arrangement of one carbon with four chlorine atoms connected to it. So going back into activity two, when a chemical reaction occurs, what happens to the atoms in the two substances? I would argue that they rearrange. In question two, when a chemical reaction does not occur, what happens to the atoms of the two substances? I would say that they They don't rearrange. They stay exactly the way that they were. And did any atoms ever change type? Let's go back and look real quick. We have the same exact type. We have chlorine and we have carbon in our reactants. We still have chlorine and carbon in our product. So the type of atom did not change. It stayed the same throughout the chemical reaction. I hope this helps. If you need any help and this still is confusing, please let me know. We can always set up a Google Meet and I can go over this in presentation mode. You don't even have to have your camera on. I can just teach it to you if you need help. So please email me if you need help.